It's pretty wild when you look at the research as to why we tend to gain a little bit of weight after the age of 50. And a lot of it comes down to what's called hyper-palatability. So literally, putting some salt on your food can play a tremendous role in helping you eat a little bit less. And I've got a couple different pathways as to how that would work. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I'm some guy on the internet. I did lose 100 pounds, and I guess that gives me some credibility, but I just like to talk about biochemistry. So, full disclaimer, if they're, as a doctor telling you not to eat a bunch of salt, listen to them, don't listen to me. Okay, but anyhow, let's break this down because this is very interesting science and some very interesting data. So hey, after this video, I do want you to check out today's sponsor, which is Natural Heaven. Natural Heaven normally makes a hearts of palm pasta. So if you typically like pasta, they have a pasta that is totally low carb, that has just a couple of net carbs, and it's made from one ingredient, made from hearts of palm. Now their pasta is awesome, but now they came out with a brown rice. So instead of cauliflower rice, if you're doing low carb or you just want to have rice, I would definitely recommend that you check them out. It is super cool. So it's like cauliflower rice, but I think the consistency is a little bit better. So if you're making stir fry, anything like that, all with one ingredient, hearts of palm. So we're talking a couple net carbs, like super high fiber, prebiotic fiber rich, very cool product. And they are a big supporter of this channel. They have been for a number of years, and I highly recommend them. So that link is down below, which will save you a nice little chunk of change if you want to check them out. Again, it's called Natural Heaven. And if you support them, you're supporting this channel indirectly. So that link is down below in the description. So I want to start off with a study that was published in the journal The Clinics of Geriatric Medicine. And what this study demonstrated was as we get older, especially over the age of 50, we literally have a decline in our number of taste buds and our overall sensitivity of taste buds. Now, I've talked about this in another video in the past, but I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this and why this is so important. Okay, so by contrast, that means that food is not going to taste as good when you are a little bit older than it did when you were younger. Now that would typically make you think, oh, well, that's gonna make me eat less, right? Well, in theory, yes, but what actually happens is a little bit different. If you look at how you eat now, based on convenience and everything like that, you would probably say maybe you're consuming more processed foods, right? More convenience foods, more things that are hyper palatable, okay? More sweet, artificial sweeteners or enhancers that make things sweeter, things that are saltier, right? It's a lot easier to eat processed foods, which is one of the reasons why there are mineral and vitamin deficiencies in people over the age of 50. It's not just that we're magically losing minerals and things like that. Yes, to some degree, some things like that do happen, not magic, but more so, it's about what we are taking in, okay? What also happens is we end up having fibrous tissue that forms around where our salivary glands are. So that means we have less digestive ability too at the salivary level. So we're having less of a taste response overall, which means that you are craving more things that are just going to get you that same dopamine response. And it happens so gradual you don't realize it. So one of the things when I say salt your food, if you salt your food, you can get that same sensory response and it will likely trigger you to eat less. Okay, it's something that I've worked on with many people. When you ask them to salt their food, it actually makes them feel more satiated. Now, I don't mean that you go and you put salt on a donut, but if you're making some spaghetti, feel okay putting a little bit of full spectrum salt on it. Do things like that. The other interesting thing is we have these gustatory receptors. Okay, they're called NST receptors within our gut. Now the science on this is a little bit convoluted, but it makes sense when you kind of dig into it a little bit. These receptors can sense sodium. Now, salt is one of these things where we have just this almost natural instinct to go to salt when we need it. It's kind of interesting. If you put a salt lick, which is like for livestock, out in the middle of a pasture, horses and cows, they know to go directly to it because salt is so critical, okay? Now, as we get older, we start having more of these mineral deficiencies and electrolyte imbalances that could potentially be arising. Well, think about it. Salt is the pillar of it, right? Salt is what allows us to retain water at the right spot. Salt is what allows us to have an action potential, like actually send a signal to move a muscle to do things. If salt is low, then we are typically going to be lower in other minerals to boot. So yes, we have that reason in, but the whole gustatory response I was talking about, a lot of times when you're craving something sweet, having some salt will satisfy that because those NST receptors in your gut don't necessarily differentiate between salt and sweet. So if you're craving something sweet, taking in a little bit of salt can satisfy those gustatory like NST receptors and sends a signal to your brain to ultimately tell you that you have satisfied that sweet craving. So it's pretty interesting. So if you're craving sweets, having a little bit of salt even in your water, or adding a little bit of salt to like a cucumber, or if you've ever had salt on a tomato or salt on a carrot, like it tastes good, it can trigger that to be satisfied. Now, this isn't about some amazing, miraculous way to like fix all your issues. This is a simple thing. It's like, hey, now I'm not going to reach for those Fritos. Or hey, now I'm not going to reach for that cherry pie. Now I'm going to have the cucumber with some salt on it and feel just as satiated. Okay? You don't realize that it's happening. But if your taste buds are not as sensitive, you are going to go for the hyper-palatable stuff. And we live in a generation now where that stuff is available everywhere. So I'm giving you some insight to hopefully help you control what you do put in your mouth a little bit more, so that you can control your vitamin intake, your mineral intake, and get the things that matter. It's better to get something nutrient dense, add some salt to it, than it is to get something that's completely devoid of nutrients. So hope this helps. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.